The embattled principal of St. James High, Joseph Williams, has broken his silence. He's dismissing claims that the female students who were seen kissing in a short video were expelled from the institution. Mr. Williams finally spoke after several days of backlash for his handling of the matter after one mother told the media that her child was expelled without due process. Shaloy Smikle has the story.
The girls were reportedly expelled in January after a 2-second video of them kissing was posted on one of the girls' WhatsApp status. The video was reportedly shared with Principal Williams. He told their mothers to find another school for them as there was no longer a place for them at St. James High School. The mother of one of the girls, a 16-year-old, told Nationwide News that she'd been facing difficulties enrolling her child in another school due to a lack of support and documentation from Mr. Williams and the Ministry of Education's regional office. The child was placed in a private institution on April 15, 3 months later, only after the matter was blown up in the media. The expulsion of the girls has since triggered a formal investigation by the Ministry of Education and the board of St. James High School. Several stakeholders, including Jamaicans for Justice, the Jamaica Teachers Association, and the LGBTQ+ rights organization Equality for All Foundation, have also spoken out against the expulsion of the girls. But Mr. Williams is painting a different picture. In an interview with Nationwide News on Monday, Mr. Williams said the girls in question were never formally disciplined over the incident. He insists that the girls had not been expelled. Instead, he says the idea of a transfer came out of an abundance of caution to protect the girls from being taunted at school.
No students were expelled. What you going to punish them for? Look from when that happened. What you going to punish them for? 6 of us came into the office. The 2 girls, the 2 mothers, the dean of discipline and myself. As they reported to me, the dean, they were very concerned because this was done from November. In January, the video was out, it was circulating in the school. They said, no, we have to separate you. We have to find another school because the thing is out and everybody now pointing on you and vilifying you. And the mother hold her and said, when me I go find school for you now and she are going to need paperwork. I said, if that is the case, you don't have no problem. We will still do the paperwork.
The mother who spoke to the media initially explained that there was no formal documentation from the principal to help find another school. But Mr. Williams is also denying this claim.
They have not returned when I saw our original girl. She was dressed up in jeans and asked my girl what happened. And she said, sir, may I go I come for you fill out this form? I said, go over to the office next door. And they did whatever. And then she took it to the dean and we spoke and she left. And when I saw what in the newspaper that this mother saying that recounting conversation with the principal, we didn't have any conversation with the 2 of us.
The matter is still being investigated by the board of St. James High. Shaloy Smikle for Nationwide News.
Thank you, Shaloy. Well, a part of what Mr. Williams said in his exclusive interview with Nationwide 90 FM on Monday was that the chairman of the school's board, Tona, Christopher McCurdy, who we're going to speak to this morning, is part of, has been carrying out a vendetta against him, that Mr. McCurdy is upset at his attempts, Williams' attempts to rebuff attempts to micromanage the school. Mr. Williams says, look, I'm the principal, I'm the CEO. McCurdy wants to, from the board level, tell me how to run the school day to day, and I'm not having it. This is what he said.
And then I remember years ago when you people in the media were calling for freedom of the press. Well, it's not freedom of THE and then PRESS. No, it's freedom of DEPRESS to the press. I'm not the press. Have you ever asked about what has been accomplished at the school which was said to be the worst school, and how many murders? You see how many, I'm so sorry for here, it's 2 down here in our region now, and not at St. James High. And they are 20 years, over 20 years down here now. Because we are teaching the children to be responsible, to be accountable. Do they think? Is there any truth in it? Think. Is what they're saying, is it helpful? Is it honest? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Because There is nothing that they can tell me that I can't answer to. I answer to facts. My life is an open book. I think the most important thing is this present chairman. I have my dialogue with this chairman. I have spoken with him since September last year. And he's on a mission. He has taken up a task. He told me in January that, and I said, man, I understand why they move our good chairman and put you in. And he said, and we had discussion over, and he said, he has never lost a battle. I said, you're fighting a losing battle. I told him in January 20, you can't move me. Remember September, he was with you guys in the media talking about multi-million-dollar fraud at the school. How can that be? Now the auditors had come, and just over 3 weeks ago, we had the exit interview. And it's in the report. They're not going to be interested in that, and they wouldn't want that to be known. All they find is ineptitude on the part of the bursar, and him culpable in certain simple duty that he should carry out. But he's not concerned about that. Everything in place here, he has a problem with.
And he said this is the current chairman.
Yeah, the current chairman. Yeah, of course. And he's the one, he's a blogger, he's in the media. He has access to the media. They don't know their role. I am the CEO on the board and the principal of the school. They want to micromanage. How can you come manage school? You don't even know anything about education. The chairman, you chair the board and you deal with policies. You are not responsible for the day-to-day running of the school, per se. You deal with policies. And on the board, we are all leaders, 15. And you are not the board. The chairman is not the board. I am not the board. It's the 15 of us would constitute the board. He has not board meeting in over 7 months because that letter that he wrote and then sent to the media and what they did, all those political interference, it never worked out. So he has to come with something again.
That's Joseph Williams, the principal of St. James High, defending his corner and defending himself against accusations of maladministration leveled by the chairman of the school's board, Christopher McCurdy, who he says is the problem.
Joining us now, the chairman of the St. James High School board, Christopher McCurdy. Welcome back to the program, Mr. McCurdy.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Carla.
You heard the principal there, Mr. Williams. He's accusing you of attempting to micromanage the leadership and also saying it seems that you're unfairly treating him in terms of maladministration at the school. No such thing. How do you respond?
To be honest with you, good morning to you again, and thank you for having me. I'm not here to have an argument with the principal over his role as principal of the school. My job is as chairman, and my responsibility is to make sure that good governance and the purse of the government and the taxpayers are protected. 1. 2, we should not lose sight of the fact that we have over 2,000 students, probably 150 teachers and staff at that school, that we have a duty to protect. So I'll just say, when you think of the direction in which this matter is heading right now, the various investigations that have been announced, I believe it is in the best interest of natural justice for the board not to comment further until these matters are properly ventilated. It is important, for us to, as I said to you before, to note that at the heart of these conversations, there are almost 2,000 students there, and in excess of 130 to 150 teachers and staff, and parents who are connected and have a vested interest in these matters. Therefore, I'm saying to you that we have to be careful in the discourse going forward. The matter has been investigated by the board. The Ministry of Education has announced that they are doing an investigation as well. I think for good governance and for transparency, we need to allow, and for fairness, we need to allow that process. I came on because out of respect for the media, and I appreciate the fact that the media would want to keep this matter, I would want to report on this matter because it's of national importance. This school, St. James High School in particular, is not a private institution. This is an institution that is paid for by taxpayers, who spends over 400 plus million per year, and more.
But Mr. Chairman, if I may, I hear you on that. But guess what? in Mr. Williams' tour de force yesterday, he would have given a sizable portion of the public the impression that what has been happening to him is as a result of him resisting an attempt by the board you lead to do his job for him. All we're asking you is to say whether that is true or not.
It is absolutely false, and I know that you guys are great journalists, and I would have loved if you had asked Mr. Williams to provide any evidence to substantiate that claim. We have always, and in every meeting almost, we emphasize that as a board, we don't control the day-to-day operation at St. James High School. However, when it comes to providing oversight and assistance, that's what we do. We provide guidance as it relates to policies, and our intention is to hold true to that. We have not deviated from that, not 1 inch.
Do you have anything on record, Chairman McCurdy, the board that is, to prove that in the past the board has written to Mr. Williams about his breaching of the education, the guidelines or the rules? In other words, unilateral actions by him, which ought to have been made by the board after consultation, made by him, and you've said to him, you cannot do that. Is there any correspondence on file to support that?
There's an investigation ongoing, and I'm quite certain that the investigation will reveal the numerous occasions where that which you have asked has occurred.
And in relation to that as well, Mr. McCurdy, is there any files that you have, any sort of communication to indicate as well that there have been expulsions that have taken place by Mr. Williams, that there was no due process in how those were carried out?
Remember, my first commentary on this matter was to make it clear to the public that from the board's perspective, we have no record of any student being expelled. There's no process that I have reviewed. There's no process that I have signed off on that has resulted in a student being expelled or even suspended.
Let me ask another to you in relation to that. Is there anything written down that has come from a parent or anything presented before your board to say that students were expelled and those matters did not come before your board?
As I've reported before, we have received complaints from several parents. One of those, which is in the public space as we speak, that particular matter has been brought to the board and it's being dealt with. That and other matters are being investigated by the board. And as you have reported yesterday, I gather that the Ministry of Education is also investigating to make sure that what is out in the public is being, taken care of properly.
For clarity's sake, Mr. Chairman, yesterday in the interview we played with Joseph Williams, he said that when the matter came to a head involving the kissing schoolgirls, there was a meeting involving 6 people: himself, the Dean of Discipline, the two parents of the girls involved, and the girls themselves. Is it a part of the rules that a disciplinary matter at that level ought to be dealt with first, as the principal said it was dealt with in a meeting involving those persons? Or should a notice of that meeting been communicated to the board, who would then have some form of intervention in the meeting? I want to know if that is in keeping with proper procedure, how that meeting went down.
The proper procedure, I cannot speak to that meeting. I was never privy to that
No,
meeting.
man, I don't want the details of the meeting in the chairman who said, listen to me again.
I don't know about that meeting.
Oh.
So what I will say to you
Yes.
is that what the provisions under the Education Act says is that if a child ought to be expelled from school, that is the purview of the board. It simply means that the matter would have to be brought to the board by the principal, and then the board would convene a hearing, and that matter would be ventilated at that level. A decision would have to be made by the board to say yea or nay to that student being expelled. We have not to date dealt with any such matters.
Based on what Mr. Williams said in the exclusive interview with us, he said that there was no expulsion. A meeting was had, and in the interest of the girls and the jeering that was taking place at the school because of what had happened, they thought it best to have them attend another school, be in a different environment. Your personal committee met, some preliminary investigations were carried out. Was this indicated to your personal committee and to the full board?
Respectfully, Tana, as I've said to you before, it's an investigation, and I know you will appreciate the fact that if you're investigating a matter, you're not going to be dealing with it publicly. And I cannot comment on whatever findings there is.
Let me ask it another way then. Have the accounts of the principal been indicated to the personal committee?
But Tana, if you ask it 10 different ways, it's going to be the same answer. We are under an investigation, and I will not comment on the findings of the personal committee.
We're not asking you for the findings, Mr. McCurdy. We're asking you whether or not a conversation has been had with the principal for his accounts of what happened. Has that been written down and presented before the personal committee? His side of the story, has that been presented?
Respectfully, Tana, those are matters that would have been presented to the personal committee.
But that's what I'm asking.
Who is currently investigating that matter? And I've said to you before, once it has to do with this matter and the investigation and whatever findings or queries, we are not going to comment on it any further.
Answer this then, Chairman. Answer this then.
Yes.
In expelling a student, the words "you are expelled" or the phrase, well, it is best that you find somewhere else to continue your education. Isn't it the same thing?
You know what I think you should do, George?
Yeah.
Tana, I think the best thing to do is to ask the principal of the institution to provide you with the correct definition for when a child is denied access to an institution.
Yes.
Verbally, and they are told to go and find another school, take your child to another school. We don't want this kind of behavior here or whatever it is. Ask the principal to give you the correct definition for those actions. The principal is quite correct because the board did not expel any child. So he needs to provide for you. I can't because I didn't take those actions. Provide for you the correct definition.
Under the rules which govern how your board operates in the structure of the St. James High School, is it proper for any other group/body other than the board to have any discussion with any child that results ultimately in that child having to continue their education elsewhere?
Based on my interpretation of the Education Act and the Education Act and regulation, no other body can make that decision except for the Board of Management.
All right,
That's my understanding.
All right, so you said decision, but hold on, just before we get to the decision, because this is the critical part that doesn't have anything to do with your investigation, because I don't want you to signpost me with that. So listen again. So I hear you on the decision. Thank you for that. But the process of engaging any child in any discussion that ultimately leads to that child having to continue their education elsewhere, is there any other group/body in the school structure that can initiate or participate in those discussions other than the board that you lead?
Based on my understanding, the initiation definitely has to take place at the operations level, where you can determine whether or not a case ought to be presented to the board regarding a child. But that is done in writing, and you present that to the board. The board then examines that report and decide whether or not the child warrants separation from the institution or the child stays at the institution. There are other measures. It's not just a matter of removing the child or the child stays. There are several other components that exist that we can use. You remember, folks, we are an institution that has the best interest of our students at heart.
Yes.
One of the things that we must be focused on is how do we correct behavior?
Yes.
If there's a behavioral problem or an act of violence, how do we fix it? That's what schools are for. We're not here to supply society with persons, with
Yes.
personnel who are unattached.
Yes.
Our duty is to keep young people attached to an
Yes.
institution that can make them into better humans.
Lastly, so if it is that there's a hierarchy of disciplinary infractions at St. James are involving students, is it true that there is no level of disciplinary infraction for which a sanction will be discussed that the board should not be aware of?
Again, based on my interpretation of the regulation, is for disciplinary actions against a student, even in the case of suspension, which the school administration has the ability to suspend a child for no more than 10 days. But even in that case, it has to be brought to the board, who can examine that result and either overturn or upheld. Same. However, if you make that decision at the school level, then the board has to be told, and we activate a committee that looks into it and decide whether or not we're okay with that decision, or the decision. Sometimes the decision warrants not just suspension, but actually expulsion or separation. It could be either. But the board is the body that actually makes that decision.
A final one from me, Mr. McCurdy. The investigations that are now taking place, has it expanded beyond the kissing girls incident?
I will definitely not comment on that one at this time.
So there might be others?
I will not comment on that one this time, Donna.
Christopher McCurdy there, the chairman of the St. James High School Board. Mr. McCurdy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Right.
you, sir. Thank you, madam.
The driver of a white Toyota Probox motor car, get serious now, who was involved in a road rage incident on Beechwood Avenue in St. Andrew last Friday, has been charged. The man, 37-year-old Peter Bramwell, attacked another man inside his Pajero motor car after both vehicles collided.
Parts of the incident, which has gone viral on social media, they were recorded by a female passenger in the Pajero. Reports are that the driver of the vehicle attempted to leave the scene of the crash to make a report at the police station, but it appeared that a bit of information was not communicated properly to Bramwell. It's understood Bramwell became enraged after the Pajero motorist attempted to drive away without explaining to him how the damage to the vehicle would be repaired.
Yeah, and yesterday we said, it's necessary to have a conversation with a psychologist and, of course, the head of the police public safety and enforcement branch, PSTEB, about a couple of things. One, how do you act when you are on the receiving end of road rage to, of course, maintain your rights in law and, of course, most critically, to protect yourself? And what are the triggers for someone to go over the top in the way Bramwell did in that video we saw? And we invited consultant psychologist, Senator Dr. Sophia Longmore, and the man heading PSTEB, ACP Gary McKenzie, to speak with us. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, good morning. Good morning to your listeners.
ACP?
Good morning to you, George Town. Good morning, Doc.
Hi, good morning.
Excellent. Let's start with Doc. Doc, I'm sure you saw, Senator, rather, I'm sure you saw the video. And I moved to ask you, as you saw Bramwell going through what, from my layman perspective, I'm calling various stages of rage, what is it that pushes an individual to that level, to those levels, through those stages?
Well, first thing I should say that, it was clear to me that this was just a trigger for other things that probably was not happening in the way that he wanted his day to go. When you see someone escalate that quickly and to that severity by a trigger that one would normally appreciate as an accident, something that can happen in life, for it to have gone that way so quickly, it means for me that there are probably other things that were operating that were stressful in his life, that this just kind of lifted the valve. Clearly, we as drivers, you don't know what the other person might be, experiencing in their vehicle. So you always have to drive on the defensive. That's the truth of the matter. Sometimes you just can't avoid these situations, and I think that this was a learning lesson for, I think, those who saw it in terms of what is possible in such a short period of time.
ACP Mackenzie, you're head of PSTEB, been there for a while. Are these common instances, road rage?
Well, I would
You
not
often get
say-
reports of these.
Well, we get reports of these, but in terms of the number of crashes that we have on our roads, we would not say that it is common, but of course it happens from time to time.
But road rage of the scale, ACP, have you had reports of anything like this recently?
Well, this one is really, I would say, outrageous, to say the least. It is one of the worst that I've actually seen, and without the benefit of everything, I mean, from start to finish, it is very difficult to say how it escalated to where it was. But certainly that was not the way to go. It could have ended up worse than how it went.
Yes, Senator, you say that in my phraseology that the gentleman seemed to be having a bad day, right? but as he went through the various stages, what happens to a person to make them avoid the various things as they go through the stages that could calm them down? In other words, he seemed to get more angrier as time went on. The more people tried to calm him down, the more he was intent on inflicting maximum damage. And I'm wondering what happens to the brain in those phases. Is there nothing that can say, you know what, maybe I need to take a step back, I'm going too far?
Right. So just a little correction that I wanted to bring to your attention, that I'm a psychiatrist.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm looking through that, and that's the reason I'm bringing this to your attention is that when I look at it through those lenses. And what I saw was someone who, it was almost as if he transformed into another persona almost, or something that was, it was triggering of maybe past experiences. He was angry to the point where it was irrational, the level of anger. It was out of context. So is it then that there were past quote-unquote traumas that were triggered by it? A sense of, I don't know if he felt a sense of injustice. He felt a sense of lack of control. And I don't know, I didn't get to scrutinize the video itself because it was just very jarring for me to watch it, to be honest with you. But I don't know if the person in the vehicle, the victim, if they were doing anything that perhaps triggered it further.
Well, Doc, I can help with that because what the report is, and ACP can back me up, is that the gentleman in the Pajero sat in the car after the crash and refused to come out to talk to the driver, and then said, you know what, I'm going to go to the station. So the report is that the driver saw that as a cue that the Pajero man was trying to flee the scene and leave him holding the bag to fix his car.
There you go. So you see, communication goes a far way now. I mean, something like that happens. ACP can correct me here. One of the most immediate things you do is you indicate that you will responsibly deal with whatever circumstances. You come out of the vehicle if necessary, or you stay in the vehicle but pass your documents or share documents. You try to reflect that you are having a civil, responsible reaction to it. Not blaming, clearly, because like I said, I don't know.
Yes.
But there could have been an aggravation of the situation based on how the person reacted.
Does rage in that situation, Senator, is rage fueled by the fact that the person who is the subject of your rage doesn't seem to pose a commensurate threat to you? In other words, you realize that you can overpower the person if you are let at them, and so that triggers the rage that you direct at your subject, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, when you are, many studies have shown that in power dynamics, that if there is the potential for the subjugation of a victim that there can be circumstances that result in that. If it's the sense of power, it's the sense of, and that is what can lead to abuse. That is why in some domestic relationships and so forth, the physically more aggressive male is able to subdue a very weakened other individual, a female usually, because of just the difference in the power that they yield physically. So there is also that factor. But whether or not, I don't know, and I said through my lens, was there any substance use at play? Was there any other issues, emotional or otherwise, any other psychiatric issues to consider? What was the circumstances, like I said, of the reaction of the individual? There are many factors. But I also, I remember seeing that the report that he has had past, I think, tickets outstanding.
Yes.
So there's also that little thing in the back of his head, where is this something that is going to affect his income capacity? You know, I don't know the consequences of it. Here's another thing that, oh Lord, I forgot to deal with police and this and that and that. And it kind of culminates in what we saw.
And with that in mind, ACP Mackenzie, when you have incidents like these, is it routine as well for the police or the courts to refer persons like this to anger management? Does that form part of the process when they go before the courts?
Right. So let me explain something here practically. When we have a crash, there are two situations that may come to the fore. One is that it may be disputed in terms of how the crash occurred, and that in of itself sometimes will cause some sort of aggression when there is disagreement. And there are times when someone is clearly wrong and there is some sort of acceptance once the other party comes out, and it is much more amicable in terms of how it is dealt with. Now, what we have seen is a situation where, in the eyes of the driver of the Toyota, he was wronged, and the kind of cooperation that he believed that he should have gotten, he was not getting it. The fact of the matter is that when a crash occurs, the law clearly states that persons have the responsibility to stop and exchange information. One of the things that makes things much easier is when, after a crash, persons come out of their vehicle and try to ascertain whether or not the other person or persons in a vehicle, if they are not injured. That usually is a much better way to start. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you exchange information. If for any reason at all the person think that they can't stop, and that could mean persons making utterances and the person feeling unsafe and so on, they can drive to the nearest police station, and the law advises that as well. In terms of persons trying to coerce or to dictate to persons what they do at a crash scene, that cannot be the case. And in this instance, I believe that the level of aggression shown by the other person, even in terms of trying to get the other person to cooperate, was far overboard. And that made the person, I believe, fearful. And in such a case, it was not advisable that the person come out, because you never know what could have happened. And so the best thing was to, of course, call the police or get to the police station. I mean, I'm very happy that there were responsible citizens there that intervened and kind of deter some other kind of activity. The question about, anger management and so on, of course, in this particular scenario, this driver is going to face the court for disorderly conduct and, of course, unlawful wounding, malicious destruction of property, and so on. And in that kind of scenario, based on what comes up, the court may order, some sort of intervention and so on. But clearly, as it relates to a crash, which can occur at any time, on any road, for any reason, it is very important for persons not to reach this particular state and to cooperate with each other, exchange information, And as I said, the law clearly states that if you are not able to stop, then someone shouldn't drive you down, try to bank you, as we always say, by swerving to your vehicle and so on. Take the information that you are seeing and report it to the police.
ACP Gary Mackenzie, and we are going to, George, do our best to put out some sort of PSA periodically to remind motorists that this is what they need to do in case there is a crash out there. Head of PSTEB ACP Gary Mackenzie and consultant psychiatrist Senator Dr. Sophia Longmore. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
your time.
Doc. Thank you, ACP.
You're very
You're
welcome.
most welcome.
All right.